Well, welcome to Streaming Star Wars, another Friday night, another week of Star Wars action. Nick is back from vacation, and I'm shoveling out goat crap from my garage because that's the way my week has gone. Nick, how you doing, my friend? You seem to be muted. I can't hear you. Try it again. There you are.
See,
Nick.
I was actually just about to say, I feel like I don't know what to do with my hands because it's been 2 weeks in a row that I haven't had a show to do because we were off 2 weeks ago and I was on vacation last week. So clearly that is true. I forgot how this works. And so I was muted. I'm outstanding and I'm excited to be here tonight to have a fun conversation, to have a drink, and just do what we love to do on a Friday night, which is hang out and talk Star Wars. I know you've had a full week. You've had new baby goats born. You've had guests.
Yeah, it's been a crazy. Yeah, I guess I can't really just sort of leave dangling out there. Why is he shoveling goat poop out of his garage? We my daughter has created. We live on a nice little piece of land here in New Jersey, and we have, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, you know that we have goats, and we've had pregnant goats for a while, and now we don't have any pregnant goats, but we have some new baby goats bouncing around, and much like the rest of the country and even parts of Europe, it has been nearly 100 degrees here, which for baby goats is it's not the best thing. So we had to bring them in the garage, and it's been interesting. A goat maternity ward in my house. So
well, if you're gonna do it, go all out, right?
I suppose so, yes. But we have an awesome show tonight. You know, we say that every week, and it's because we get an awesome show. I think
we do a pretty good job around here.
This is a fun show. But we have a social media superstar with us tonight, which is really cool. And he's also from your neck of the woods. Matt Mitchell will be with us.
Fellow Alabamian.
Yes.
I'm excited to talk to Matt a little bit. Before we get to Matt, I did want to bring up one piece of business that we have certainly been talking about on our social medias, and you and I and Scotty have been working very hard, noses to the grindstone. But Podathon 2022 is scheduled for Saturday, September the 17th. We are going to do the third annual Podathon. We are continuing to raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Last year we raised $8,300, Pete, and we have set the bar higher this year, haven't we?
We have. We want to hit 5 figures. We want to hit $10,000, and I'm so excited because we have a full slate of shows. We have some new ones. We have some returning friends, and we are also starting to get our list of prizes. We have exclusive prizes coming from all the major book manufacturers. Thank you to Becca Benjamin, who's a good friend of the show and is part of this. Becca is like one of these behind the scenes people who you don't get the sense from her because she's so humble, but she knows everybody. So she's helping us out with that. But you've got Tom Spina Designs, his a Regal Robot has decided, has once again donated this year. So we're going to release a lot of that stuff coming up. But yeah,
absolutely.
And here's the thing too, if you go to thepodathon.com right now and you donate today, so the way we give away these prizes that go with this amazing event is for every $5 you donate, you get an entry into the raffle to win some of this amazing stuff, autographs and collectibles, and I think we're going to get an exclusive from a major film corporation. I can't say names or anything, but we're pretty close on that one. But for every $5 you donate, you get an entry into the raffle. If you donate before September 17th, when the show starts, you're going to get double the raffles. And
absolutely,
I think it's okay to say we received our second donation.
Yep.
It was a major donation of $500 from Brian Fennessy and his local PBA. So Brian, thank you so much. That's 200 entries. So you got to get something. Plus, so thank you so much for that. So if you go to thepodathon.com, you can donate today. And in addition to that, the first 25 donators are going to get an exclusive collectible, the Fandom Gives Back pin that we had produced
Yeah,
for the show.
absolutely. And just in case anybody weren't a part of Podathon last year, or you missed it, we work directly with Make-A-Wish, and 100% of your donations go directly to Make-A-Wish. We don't handle the money.
Yep.
The link that you go to when you go to podathon.com is a Make-A-Wish fundraising link. So all that money goes directly to them to impact the really important work that they do. So
yeah,
I'm thrilled that we get to do that again. Like you said, we've got 14 or 15 shows at this point. We're going to go all day and into the night. I know that a lot of those shows are working hard on guests. I've got something pretty exciting on deck that I don't want to drop all the way, but I can tease just ever so briefly.
Yep.
And I know everybody's just excited to, top last year, and last year was unbelievable. So it's hard to imagine we can do it, but with all the folks that we've got on board helping us out, it's really going to be fantastic, and I can't wait.
It's going to be great. Once again, go to thepodathon.com. If you want to donate ahead of time, great. If you want to wait till the day, that's fine too. Or if you want to do both, that's cool. And you can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at the Podathon. That's the best way to hear about all the news as it drops, which will include new giveaways, amazing guests. I am aware of 3 guests so far, and we're on par from last year, if not a little bit ahead already, and that was a great thing. Absolutely. So but we have an awesome guest waiting in the wings. So before we do that, we want to get to our news. Nick, are you ready to tell us about, because it again feels like there's nothing going on in Star Wars, but there's a lot going on in Star Wars.
There's pretty much always something going on in Star Wars. So I say let's do this news so we can get to our guest.
Awesome.
Skeleton Crew gets a budget, Ashley talks Ahsoka, and an acolyte is confirmed. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the galaxy. Another week, another flood of news, rumors, clickbait, and conversation. This is Nick Milkey, and welcome to Disturbances in the Force. All the links to the original sources can be found in the notes, and I urge you to check them out. A news story this week by The Hollywood Reporter revealed that the Star Wars series Skeleton Crew will have a budget of $136 million for its first season. While there has yet to be an announced episode count, if you base it on recent runs of 6 to 8 episodes, that means each one would have a budget of between 17 and 22 million. This would put the show ahead of the episodes of The Mandalorian, which clocked in at between 12 and 15 million per episode. According to a Yahoo Finance listing, Skeleton Crew would only fall behind Marvel's series on Disney Plus at 25 million an episode, Stranger Things Season 4 at 30 million an episode, and the new Lord of the Rings Rings of Power series coming in at $50 million per episode. Skeleton Crew is slated for a 2023 release date. In a tweet from video game developer Zynga earlier this week, it was announced that the anticipated game Star Wars Hunters has been delayed until sometime in 2023. A tweet released by the company stated, quote, "We are working tirelessly to achieve our vision for Star Wars Hunters. Our ambition is to create a competitive battle arena game that will entertain for years to come. To ensure we meet the high expectations we are setting for fans globally and ourselves as developers, we have made the decision to delay the worldwide launch of Star Wars Hunters. The game will now launch in 2023 on Nintendo Switch, iOS, and Android devices." End quote. During this year's Star Wars celebration, it was revealed that a new series of shorts called Tales of the Jedi will be coming to Disney Plus, visiting key moments in the history of the galaxy. Liam Neeson has been announced to reprise his role as Qui-Gon Jinn, but perhaps even more exciting for fans was the news that the show will explore Ahsoka Tano's origin story, and that the beloved former Jedi will be voiced once again by Ashley Eckstein. Earlier this week, Sci-Fi and Fantasy magazine spoke to Eckstein about returning to the role of Ahsoka. She said, quote, "I'm just beyond honored to step back into Ahsoka's boots and breathe life into her again for Tales of the Jedi. Dave Filoni promises me I would always be the voice of Ahsoka in animation, and I'm thrilled to return, and I'm so excited," the actress teased. She said, "The shorts are beautiful, the stories are wonderful, and I can't wait to share them with everyone." End quote. Later in the article, Eckstein was asked what it was like to share the role of Ahsoka Tano with actress Rosario Dawson, who plays the character in live action, to which Eckstein replied, "Yeah, it's very exciting. It's something I always approach with so much gratitude. I don't look at what I'm not doing. I look at what I have been able to do. Every new opportunity I'm so grateful for," she enthused. "I'm honored to be able to do Tales of the Jedi, and when I'm not filling Ahsoka's boots in animation, I've made it my literal life's goal to be a real-life version of her day in and day out." End quote. Star Wars Tales of the Jedi is slated for release in fall of 2022. A new teaser trailer featuring footage for Disney Plus's Andor show debuted on Twitter earlier this week, featuring a few new shots in the trailer and a still photo of the titular Andor himself. This new tease, which debuted through Disney's ESPN sports property and then made its way online, has added to the growing excitement as fans anticipate the release of the first 2 episodes of the 2-season show. The first 2 episodes of Star Wars Andor debut on Disney Plus on Wednesday, August 31st, 2022. And finally this week, in a post to her Instagram account earlier today, one that was also shared out by the official Star Wars social media accounts, actor Amandla Stenberg has confirmed that they have been cast in a lead role in the upcoming Disney Plus series, The Acolyte. While sharing pictures of them wearing a Darth Maul-themed outfit and posing with life-size R2-D2 and Darth Vader, Stenberg said, quote, "Next stop, a galaxy far, far away. I'm so excited to finally announce that I'm joining Star Wars The Acolyte. Honored is an understatement. May the Force be with you." End quote. Stenberg's previous work includes a breakout role as Rue in the film adaptation of The Hunger Games, as well as films such as The Hate You Give and Dear Evan Hansen, and TV series roles such as Mr. Robinson and the show Sleepy Hollow. The Acolyte is a Disney Plus series written and directed by Leslie Headland, known for her work on the series Russian Doll, and is said to be taking place in the waning days of the High Republic era and about 100 years before the prequel era. While no further details have emerged, the show is said to be in pre-production and is slated for a potential August 2023 release. Well, that wraps it up for this week's Disturbances in the Force. Make sure to check out the ATG Cast podcast stream for weekly one-on-one interviews with the people behind the fandom. This Thursday, Around the Galaxy sits down with Mark Von Olin from De Nuo Novo. Please subscribe for regular updates. Follow us on all your social media channels at ATGcast and visit our website at atgcast.com to keep up with us, find our merch, and get information about supporting the show as an ATG patron. Thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.
Well, there you go. There's the news again. It really is. And again, this Amandla Stenberg story hit just before we came on. This happens every single Friday. So that's great. Really, really cool stuff happening. I'm excited to hear that Ashley's coming back doing the voice of Ahsoka. But
it's clear that she loves that character, and it's clear that she's a good ambassador for Star Wars fandom. So anytime she gets to have these roles and be connected, and even at Celebration, she got to moderate some panels and do some of that stuff. So you always love to see her involved. And since her husband retired from playing baseball, I guess somebody's got to be doing something. So.
Yeah, I'm sure she's got to keep him busy. But speaking of keeping busy, we have an awesome guest. We mentioned it before. It is really funny. The guests that we have both been very fortunate enough to have from the Star Wars universe on our show, people who have created video games, who've done voices, who've been actors, writers, that has always been a blast. But this next guest is the first guest where both my 10-year-old and my 12-year-old saw the thumbnail and said, "Oh my God, you have that guy?" So let's bring in Matt Mitchell to join us on Streaming Star Wars.
That is a fancy graphic there. Wow.
Matt,
we're trying to make it look legit.
This is the most professional thing I've ever been a part of, right here.
We may not have 1 million TikTok followers, Matt, but we do spend way too much time and effort on making the show look nice. But Matt, thank you so much for
accomplished. It looks fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. This is really exciting, as I said, for us, and there is that sort of social media vibe, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it is interesting that that Star Wars has such an interesting social media world, which we forget is so different from the rest of it. You have established your spot in the social media space as a comedian, as a writer, as a producer. But Matt, maybe for the people who may not know you, maybe give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah. So I have lived in Alabama my entire life. It's a very weird story how I got started doing all this. It was actually parodying a local newspaper here in Walker County, Alabama, called the Daily Mountain Eagle. It was a Twitter account, but just a joke between friends, and that kind of blew up into something bigger. It led to like a freelance writing job, doing some stuff for the big newspaper in Alabama, AL.com, the big news website.
Mm-hmm.
And then it led to, they started a new little spinoff of like Southern humor and all that called It's a Southern Thing. And I joined in with them about 2 weeks after that got launched. And that is where I've been since 2017. Yeah, thank you, TW. But yeah, so I've been doing that. And then also working on my own stuff on TikTok and YouTube, doing a lot of SEC football stuff last year that was received pretty well. So we'll keep that going. And so, yeah, it's just a lot of Southern humor, and that's kind of my sweet spot. It's the lane I try to stay in. Every now and then I get out of it and might fool around with something, and they tell me, go back to your area. Nobody wants you over here. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So, and Nick reached out to you. Nick, tell us what made you think that this guy may have a Star Wars connection.
Absolutely. And like I said, and I said this to Matt before we came on air, as somebody who lives in Alabama and has a Facebook account, I know who the Alabama Ostrich was. I, found out that was Matt. And so as I started to watch his stuff, because again, people share his videos all the time. There are a couple of folks that you can count on in your Alabama Facebook feeds. You've got several of them that are SEC football related. You got the funny recap videos after a weekend. This is what it was if it was, a wedding date, each SEC team. There's always, something funny, that kind of stuff. So I had seen the videos and I had watched some of them and I thought they were funny. But sometimes I tend to, because I only use Facebook about as much as I have to. And so a lot of times, like, I just scroll through all those videos and keep going because it feels overwhelming sometimes. Like, I don't know if I can get into all this. I don't know if I have time for videos, especially, the more people share them out. I'm like, I'm that guy that initially goes, it's probably not that funny. Well, it turns out Matt's are actually really funny. But at some point when I started watching some of his videos, I noticed in his background and one of his other setups that he uses, he's got shelves behind him. He's got 1-up arcade games. And on some of those shelves were a bunch of Star Wars figures and pops and droids and all that kind of stuff. And that was when my Star Wars podcast hosting brain said, I want to talk to this guy. I want to hear about his Star Wars fandom. And, I kind of played the, hey, I'm in Alabama 2 card to try and get my foot in the door. And so that was how it happened. And I'm thrilled that you're here to hang out with us tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have done this in front of the shelves. Unfortunately, there's no Star Wars. I've moved my Star Wars stuff to consolidate to one area. Yeah, this is kind of more of a Southern collage of randomness. But yeah,
that's all right.
No, it's the Star Wars stuff, and that I don't know. It's the child in me loves like the action figures and the toys and all that. And Star Wars has the coolest stuff. They're probably a little too liberal with their license, giving it out to anybody who wants to make Star Wars stuff. Because another thing I'm a big fan of is like Mario, Nintendo stuff, and they are super strict on who can make that stuff, but not Star Wars. You name it, and it exists in the Star Wars universe of merchandise. But there's all kinds.
You can probably get most of it at $5 Below or Dollar General, either ones.
I've picked up some cool stuff at $5 Below. Yeah,
no doubt.
Dollar General, hit or miss, but yeah, it. So I've got all that stuff there. I say I'm a big fan of Star Wars. I will meet. I'm in the room with 2, and everyone else in the chat probably knows 5 times as much as I do, or at a minimum, about the Star Wars universe. But it's something that I've always been fascinated with, and it's just a great story and great universe of just it's never expanding and always expanding. And then there's there's a whole universe of it that existed, and then Disney bought it, and now that doesn't exist anymore. That's not canon anymore, apparently. So. That's another thing where I just like I dive in. I'm like, I'm going to get really into it now. And then I'm going to start reading some books. And so my buddy was telling me something. I saw a TikTok about the Thrawn series. So I bought those books, and I told my buddy who's like all into the books. I was like, all right, here we go. Starting with Thrawn. He's like, whoa. You don't start with Thrawn. You got to start over here. And I was like, come on now. It just got here from Amazon.
That's right.
Don't tell me this. So that's kind of what it's been like. Every time I'm like, here we go. And then I find out, no, not quite. You need to start over there. It's way back.
That's a legitimate thing. And I'll even agree with you. And Pete, I know you and I talk about this a lot. Like when it comes to the books in particular, I read a bunch of the books when I was in junior high and high school because I grew up in that era with the old extended universe, the original Thrawn trilogy, a bunch of those books. And then when they kind of restarted the canon after Disney bought it and all that kind of stuff, like I read one or two, and there's a couple of factors that play into it. One, I have a wife and 4 daughters, and the only time I have to myself is at night when everybody goes to bed. And I'm most likely to take the path of least resistance, which is to watch something on my phone or my iPad with the earbud in instead of trying to read a book. And audiobooks don't work for me because I'm too much of a multitasker. So I start listening to an audiobook, doing 5 other things, and I've missed 20 minutes of whatever's going on.
Yeah.
So I haven't jumped into as many of the books, and like with the High Republic, which is that new initiative and the kind of super early peak of the Jedi, like I haven't touched it because there's so much there that I just am like, I can't commit to that at this stage in my life. But what I will commend to you is the Mike Chen Brotherhood book that just recently came out. That's about Obi-Wan and Anakin right around the time Anakin was knighted a Jedi. Don't have to have any background. You can just pick it up and read it. And then I have not read it yet, but I've heard Shadows of the Sith, which also just came out, that is about Lando and Luke in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens or somewhere in there. That one's supposed to be really great and kind of have that old book feel. So
Nice.
But you bring up an interesting point, Matt, because there is so much Star Wars, and people who are watching and listening are probably sick of hearing me say it, but I always reference my dad, who's 75 years old. He's a big sci-fi horror, genre kind of guy. Big Star Wars guy, got me into Star Wars when I was 7 years old, that whole thing. But there's so many times where I'll talk to him about something like The Mandalorian, and there'll be a character on there that was in the Clone Wars, which I loved, and he's never watched. And watching them try to, they seem to be successful in being able to get people who don't know all that stuff to still be able to enjoy it. Do you ever feel like you're left out of it, or are you able to just sort of soak it all in and enjoy it?
I don't really feel left out. I mean, it does feel like, watching, The Mandalorian, and there's a character that's going to be on there was Clone Wars, like you just said. And all of those people who have watched Clone Wars, I'm not one of them. I've seen just a few episodes here and there. That they're super excited about the character, and so I'm just like, they must be good. Then you see them, and you're like, okay, yeah, I get it now, and it makes me just a little bit closer. Like, I guess I can sit down and spend the next 3 months watching all these episodes. I haven't sat down to do it yet, but I don't really feel left out because they do a great job of introducing the character to new people. That and it feels like I haven't heard a long time like super fans complain that the way they introduced this character they didn't like because they already knew all this backstory. They didn't need that, so I feel like they give you just enough to like catch you up. You need to know, you'll know everything you need to know to watch the series and not feel left out. But it still give those hardcore, have never missed a page of a book or a second of a movie or show. They don't feel like they're getting a repeat of something they've already watched or read before. So at least that's from what I can see.
Yeah,
I don't hear complaint because I will say the Star Wars universe of fans, if there's something they don't like, you're gonna hear about it. It's not gonna keep it to themselves. I'm like, you know what? I don't think people would like to hear my opinion on this, so I think I'll just keep it to myself. That's not how that works.
Right. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a Star Wars fan that doesn't have an opinion on something one way or another. I think.
Yeah. No, I have heard it. Yeah. That's usually recently. It's always been like, oh, you like Star Wars, and then they ask about the most recent trilogy. Yeah, they want an opinion from you right away.
Right,
it's true. It's true.
It's like, where do you stand? Are you? It's really like pick your side. Are you light or dark here? Let me know.
Right.
Where you're at. So, and I disappointed by saying that I enjoyed the most recent ones. So
yeah, it's become that thing, and I know existed outside of the realm of what I'm about to describe, but I always.
Oh, Nick, you froze up.
Thought that might have been me for a second.
Nope, that's the it's the internet there. No, so I guess where one of the places he may have been going with that is it does look like he's praying or something. I hope he's okay. Maybe he's just before I talk about the sequel trilogy, let me just say a quick prayer. So but you made an interesting point, and it's funny. I do find that when I meet, sort of like, I'll wear a Star Wars shirt everywhere I go, basically, and you have that conversation, and the first question often is, well, what did you think of the new movies? And that really is what kind of responses have you got from people when you talk about that?
I usually, if it's the type of fan, I think that ask. Well, really, it's been the last one. They're very upset about what they did with Rey.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. I could have seen it go. I can see it. They could have gone a totally like a whole bunch of different ways with it. But I always tell them I didn't mind it. It did.
Right.
Yes, it was fan service, but wasn't most of this like the newest trilogy fan service. It felt like it to me.
Yeah.
So I didn't hate it, and that's kind of where they're almost there's more of the gatekeepers. They're the ones that get mad at me about that opinion.
Right.
I guess they think that it's probably my fault that it's true. They made it for me. They try to get the new fans in there that, but for the most part, people are just like, I didn't care for it that much. It's not as good as the original trilogy. And then, yeah, of course. Well, I mean,
Right.
what is?
Yeah.
But there's just been a few, but I think they've cooled off since then. That was very close to the release of that movie.
Yeah.
So they've calmed down.
Now, have you been a big fan of the some of the Disney Plus shows? Have you watched Mando and Boba Fett and Obi-Wan?
I love The Mandalorian. That one has been, I mean, that was like the day Disney Plus launched.
It was. Yep.
I think I watched that at 2 a.m. when it finally became available and was just blown away. And it's still just amazed. It's one of the best TV shows out there. I mean, not just in the Star Wars universe or sci-fi, like just straight up being made right now. It's so good. It's great storytelling. And you can watch. What I love about it is that each episode you could just watch on its own.
Yeah.
There's a nice narrative, a common string that runs through all the episodes, but it doesn't get lost. It doesn't get too big for itself, which I think would be very easy to do in the Star Wars universe. It keeps the story nice and compact, and it just carries a nice, thread all the way through. So I love it.
I think that's a great observation about the show because, I think that we do live in a world, most streaming shows, right? Like I'm finally getting caught up on Stranger Things.
Yeah, that's a good example of what not to do this last season. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you end up with also, it's like, first of all, it drops all at once. So if you don't watch it all at once, you're either spoiled or so far behind, you're like, forget it. But the second thing is, like you said, and it's really interesting because George Lucas created Star Wars to be episodic. And you can watch episode 3 and then 6 and not, I mean, you're missing the string, but you're still getting a great story that started and ended in that show. Yeah, which I think is really cool. Now, do you have any early memories of seeing Star Wars as a kid, or what was your sort of entry into Star Wars?
I tried to think because I knew this question would come up, and I was like, when did it really start for me? Because I was a kid. Born in the mid 80s. So, the 90s are my childhood. And that was a kind of until you get to 99 when the first Phantom Menace dropped.
Yeah, Phantom Menace was 99.
So for most of the 90s, it's pretty much dead. I think they did a re-release, Lucas toyed with them for the
97 was the re-releases. See,
right.
I am that actually nerd, right? With that. Well, it was 97. Yeah, but you're right. Yeah, so they had the re-releases 97, but there was that dead time back until Phantom Menace.
So there wasn't a whole lot for that in my childhood. But I was trying to remember what was my first ooh, I really like this. And my earliest memory of really getting hooked on it was this arcade game. The
welcome back,
Star Wars Trilogy arcade. And it was a joystick gunner. They had it at my Walmart. And I can't tell you how many quarters I spent on that thing. I was determined to beat it. I think that was my first ooh, I really like this. And but then Phantom Menace came out and I was like, do I really like this? And I've learned to respect the prequels a little bit more. I think I understand more what George Lucas is going here of here's the undercurrent, here's what pushed all this in emotion. It's a lot more of you have to appreciate the politics of it. There's some good action, but the politics of it and the story is better, I think, than the action. But yeah, that arcade game, I think looking back, I think that's what really sparked it for me. That's a fun
that was
game.
The one with the sort of the Ray graphics, the lines and the the Death Star where you kind of came in and Yeah, I remember, boy, arcades. Those were, kids today will not appreciate that.
They don't even know Walmart used to have arcade games in it. I don't know.
Exactly.
They don't anymore.
I used
got tore up pretty bad. But yeah,
I used to go to a little store called it's a weird name nowadays. It was called the Big N, and because it was in the town of Newton, New Jersey, and they had a Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, and it was at the bottom entrance to the store, and I would stand there. You remember, you'd put your quarters on the game so the next guy knew that you were waiting for him to die. And but yeah, just that whole concept, and honestly being introduced to something that way is so cool. That was sort of a like what really sparked your Star Wars love. It's so interesting. I was talking about my son. He got into it through the animation. My daughter got into it through Rey. I got into it through seeing it the summer of '77. But everybody's had their own entry point into it, and I think that's really pretty cool.
I've always been very jealous of people who grew up with the original trilogy. That was my when I was in college, I worked at an IMAX theater down in Mobile, and my boss, who's in charge of the theater, was a super top level Star Wars fan. He's the first person that he introduced me to that they were Star Wars novels, like they were books, because I saw one on his desk and I was like, what in the world is this? And he explained, and then all of it way over my head. I'm like, all right. He went deep real quick, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, him telling me the stories of watching that as a kid and then seeing the Phantom Menace after all those years, sitting in the movie theater opening night, and him telling me, I cried like a baby when that opening crawl came up, and just started tears of joy streaming down his face. And then I was just nothing but jealous. I was like, man, what a great thing to have. I just have the Ninja Turtles that I grew up with, and they just ruined that 6 times over. So I've got nothing. Yeah.
It's been rebooted so many times,
and it makes it worse every time.
It's like degradation. Every time they do another one, you just lose about 10% more.
Right, it's like a VHS copy gone horribly wrong. Let's see how many 80s and 90s references we can make in 30 seconds. But it's true. It is, and I was lucky. I did see it, and I talk about it all the time. How I don't remember seeing the movie itself. There's a couple sort of flashes of particular scenes, but I remember driving home afterwards in the back of my dad's and my parents' station wagon. I would say my dad. I did have a mother. They were together. It was a thing. But I remember in the back, way far back of the station wagon, because it was before safety was invented, and was pretending to shoot down TIE fighters as they drove by the car. And but it was interesting because it was that moment, and I remember seeing Close Encounters after that, and Battlestar Galactica and all those things, and I remember constantly comparing it to Star Wars. Everything was, is this as good as Star Wars or not? Is this as good as Star Wars or not? And ever since then, I still do that. And on social media, of course, everybody always asks you what is your favorite Star Wars, and and then tells you why you're wrong for whatever your reason might be. Do you have you had a chance to really kind of pick out a favorite sort of Star Wars? Is there a trilogy that you kind of are not your favorite? I don't want to use that word because we'll get beat up for it, but that is there a place that you go when you think Star Wars? When we say, hey Matt, Star Wars, where does your head go first?
You say it, the first thing that comes to my head is probably my favorite character, which is Darth Vader. But I'm gonna say favorite movie. I say it, and I feel like I always say it, and I feel like I'm about to get hate for it. And every Star Wars fan's be like, "Yeah, that's a good one." Favorite movie is Rogue One. I know it's outside of the trilogies, but man, it's just perfection to me. And I know that on its own, it's all about the other stories. It's just a bridge. So it doesn't exist without those. I get that. Totally understand. But just the story, the fact that I love that, I guess this feels very dark to say this, but I love when a story is not afraid to lose characters.
Yeah.
And spoiler, you lose them all in Rogue One.
Yeah.
But they risked, it was such a great story of sacrifice for the greater good, and the biggest sacrifice for all of them. And then the best Darth Vader scene of all of the movies at the end of Rogue One. It just gives me chills just thinking about it. And I will just put it on. I remember when they dropped that Blu-ray and I ran to go get it, put it in there, and then just went straight to that scene, turn the lights off, turn the sound up just so I could watch it one more time. Because in the movie theater, it was just like,
yeah,
this is the greatest. Like this was amazing. So I think that for me, it's been my most rewatched one by far.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we think about Star Wars, and you were that sort of, I guess, second generation Star Wars fan, and so I've been talking about this a lot lately because it's an interesting concept, and I'd love your thoughts on it. When you watched the original trilogy, if you think about it, we were so accepting of the rebels are good guys, the Empire is bad. Now, of course, the Empire blew up a planet. They had a big guy in robes that sent all his troops in and just murdered people as they came on the ship. So you got the sense they were the bad guys and the good guys, but it was pretty black and white. And now, the world we live in now, which is what's making such interesting stories like Rogue One, even like the Obi-Wan Kenobi series and the upcoming Andor series, now people don't so readily accept, yeah, these guys are good guys, these guys are bad guys. There's a darkness that needs to happen sometimes for the light to come out. There needs to be that sort of, a rebellion by its very nature is a resistance. It's a breaking the rules. It's making questionable decisions. And to now start to see that, and I think that's why Rogue One was so interesting, was because it was the first time we saw the wars part of Star Wars. Yeah, we saw the battles and Hoth and all that stuff, but this was where you really were like, yeah, this is a gritty war. There's people making sacrifices for this. So I guess my question then would be, so for you, like for shows like Andor, which are coming up, and or better yet, let me ask it this way, because we talked about Mandalorian. Has the story of Star Wars evolved for you in the way it's being told? And do you think of it as a more complex story or just a bigger story? Because those are two slightly different things.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. And it does feel like at times it became less complex with the most recent trilogy. Mm-hmm. But I think once you dive, I think the shows are helping make it a little bit more complex. It definitely does seem big as somebody who is just struggling to keep up with the new stuff as it comes out, along with everything else that comes out too, all the other shows I want to watch.
Sure.
It does feel like, can y'all just like pump the brakes on new shows for a few months? Let me catch up on everything. I'm still trying to watch The Boys. I had to run through Stranger Things faster than I wanted to to avoid spoilers. Yeah. So it does feel like that, but the shows have helped. I think that is, you're right. I think with that most recent trilogy, it did not seem as if the good guys struggled as much with the dark side as you have seen in previous films. Right. You just saw a lot of Kylo struggling with it. Yeah. At least that's what I first think of. So it's complex here and there.
For sure.
No doubt.
Yep.
Fixed question. Well, I didn't answer your question at all. I just went full politician and was like, yeah, in the middle there.
It's good. Well, let's do this. Let's pivot this way a little bit. Your job, a lot of what you do is in the world of social media. It's not necessarily Star Wars social media, but you're on TikTok, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, you make content, you make videos. The world of social media is its own animal. We all know that. Any of us on this screen, we're of that age that like Facebook wasn't a thing. Like Facebook wasn't even a thing when I was in college. Like I had to join it. I actually tricked Facebook into joining it when you could still only join it as a college student, even though I was out of college, because I still had my college email address forwarded to like my Yahoo address. So I got in through this weird back door, and literally like 2 weeks later, they opened it up for everybody else.
Isn't that weird that people like wanted to be on Facebook so bad you would like skirt the rules to get on? Now it's like, what do I do to get off this? I would love to be done with this forever. Yeah.
As many times as I've tried to get off of it, every time I think I'm like, you know what, I'm really done. I'm like, I still use it for work, or I still like my mom gets pictures of my kids off of it, and I feel like I'm doing it for her. So with social media being the animal that it is, and certainly you have a pretty good, connection and understanding of that. I like the dynamic we have on the screen right now because Pete and I are those sweaty Star Wars nerd fans that we talk about. You're a Star Wars fan, but on a different level, but you're kind of our social media expert. Talk a little bit about social media and what you see from your perspective as relates not only to Star Wars fandom, but fandoms in general and how that plays with social media. There's a lot there, but I'd love your perspective before Pete and I just go on a warpath about it.
Oh gosh. It makes the good part of the fandom even better. I think you've got you could come together, you can connect with people. Like maybe you live in a world like nobody in your family loves the movies, and none of your like circle of friends at school or work, but then you can connect with people like strangers even and build this camaraderie and then hopefully meet up at some point. And then there's all of the great other content you could build on top of that. Like I'm not a fan fiction guy, but I know some people just love it, live for it. And that's great that exists, that you could have memes and jokes and everything else. That's my kind of stuff that you could just take one bit that was funny and then take it even further. I love that. So it takes the best parts of it and makes it so much better. Conversely, it makes the worst parts like a dumpster fire. All of the unfortunately, and every fan base has it. Star Wars is not isolated in this regard.
Sure,
they're everywhere. The toxic fans, it gives them a megaphone,
right?
And unfortunately, like when any kind of news or something like that breaks, they're the quickest ones to jump on board and then just start spewing their opinion as if it's like the be all end all of the Star Wars or whatever fan base. So that's kind of the negative side to it. And that's what's unfortunate is that new people, I think, that are kind of like dipping their toes in the water of certain like things, including Star Wars, might see those people first. And it might scare them away and be like, I don't know if this is for me. It's hard you got to step back and realize this is just like 0.01% of the fan base here. Unfortunately, this is the way social media works, is that comment has gotten the most interactions, so it is promoted to the top, and so that's what everyone sees first, because that's just the way this stupid internet thing works. But so that's the big negative side there. I think it has, unfortunately, just as much as helped, it's kind of hurt bring new people in when you see some of that stuff.
Absolutely. And I love what you said, and this is what makes you a better person than me, because I asked that question and you immediately went to the positives, where I would have been like, well, gatekeeping, and there's this and there's that and there's all these, and there are those things, but you did immediately go to, it's a chance for people to connect. It's a chance for people to find their tribe, find their person. I mean, Pete and I met through social media and through the fact that we're both Star Wars podcasters. And I mean, almost 2 years ago at this point, I found his show, started listening. I said this all the time.
A little bit.
I stalked him a little bit. He had a bit at the end of his podcast where he'd say, if you or someone would be a good guest on my show, let me know. So I sent him a message. I was like, hey, man, I have a podcast.
Oh, no.
No, see, I just shut him down. I don't want to hear the story again. No, but he did. He reached out and I checked that. But it is interesting, because also then you look at something like, okay, cool, you're still there, but you look at something like Star Wars Celebration, where we got to meet all these nerds that we had become friends with, and honestly, I think social media was the best thing to happen to some people during pandemic. And you also,
for sure,
I get, now that I think you follow me now, Matt, you'll see I don't back down from people taking some really bad takes on things, and sometimes I probably should just be like, all right, you're an idiot, but I just can't do that. But what's interesting is you start to see that, and as somebody who's got such a social media presence as you do, I start to understand where it's dangerous for people, because I the first time that I got attacked for an opinion, and I was attacked hard from this whole group of people known as the Fandom Menace, who are just the worst type of fan. It's based in just some of the ugliest parts of fandom. But they came after me hard like 2 years ago on one comment I made. And I remember, and I'll say it. I'm fairly together. I got a wife. I got kids. I got responsibilities outside of a podcast and a Twitter account. But I could see where, I mean, it got to me. I was like, there were moments I was like shaking. I was like, where are they going with this? So I can imagine if you are somebody who is reliant on social media, and honestly, that's an okay thing. I think that's fine because there's a lot of people who don't have the social range outside of that, or the social experience, or even because of pandemic, there was such a lockdown. But the problem is this space then can get pretty ugly and can get pretty nasty pretty quickly. Have you ever seen, I mean, I know you must have, in your comments and things like that, do people kind of, and how do you respond to it? Do you, I guess I'm asking, I need help. I can't stop commenting.
Yeah, that's
He
tough.
can't help himself.
I used to just love to argue online. That was my thing. And then I don't know. It's just when you get so tired and broken down, like beat down by it, you're just like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm not changing anybody's opinion.
Right.
We're
right.
just going back and forth. And these people just they live for the argument. You
Right.
know, they don't care about changing my mind either. They just want to argue.
Right.
And so for me now, it's like I rarely respond to anything. And I'll see negativity, where somebody says something they don't like, something I made or whatever, all the time. I mean, like every day. I probably see at least one comment, and they usually just ignore it, which is tough to do. But when you do it enough time, repetition is the key. Eventually, you'll just think nothing of it. Yeah, I will say every once in a while somebody gets very creative with an insult, and you're like, "That's new. That one actually stings a little." Found my insecurity there, so well done. But don't let them know, because then they'll never stop.
They'll hammer you.
And then if you really, really get tired of it, just like you just block them, and nothing is more powerful than just saying, "See ya, never again." Thanks to just one little click of the button, I never have to see or hear you again. So that works pretty well. That's been a nice tool when things get, I guess, just too much. I just can't ignore it. But that doesn't happen. That's pretty rare that I have to go that far.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And I have a follow-up question, and kind of related to what Pete said, and I agree with Pete. And it's different, I would imagine, to a degree in what you do as a comedian. As you're doing light videos, you're doing funny stuff about being a Southerner, football, that kind of thing. It's not, hey, we've got the Kenobi show, and there's this awesome character Reva, and a bunch of idiots show up and go, why did you have to make a black girl a focus of the show? Like, it becomes a whole different thing. It's not the same, but there's a concept, and I'd love your thought on this, just as somebody who is so engaged in social media. Pete does a really good job of calling out essentially what we tend to call like the YouTube grifters, the people who are literally making money off the algorithm by spewing hate and hate speech and using the buzzwords like woke and social justice warriors and all this other kind of stuff. But then when he calls those people out, he tends to have people that come at him and say, you should just ignore them, because if you call them out, you're giving them a platform. Whereas I tend to agree with him. Somebody should stand up. Somebody should tell those people, like my dad, who may or may not be on social media and sees that one video and goes, well, this one guy said that they're rebooting the entire, sequel trilogy because George Lucas didn't like it. And like, there's a fine line between like calling out idiots and calling out people who are just literally trying to trigger the people who aren't paying attention. Yeah. Versus like what's really there. And I don't know how much of that you might have encountered, but I'd love your thoughts on just kind of that idea of like, you're offering them a platform. No, I'm not. I'm telling an idiot, hey, you're being an idiot. Right. Versus, they've already got the platform. The people that they've gotten, they've been there. They already, joined up on their camp. But yeah, do you have any thoughts?
It's interesting because I think this is probably a little more unique to Star Wars, and because it's so big. Sure. And there are extremely devoted fans. I mean that there are very few franchises stuff that rival probably the level of fandom that Star Wars has. So there is unique in that aspect, that if it is almost like its own world, and it very much mirrors how everything else works in life. Like so this, what I'm about to say is a big problem for at least the United States, in that there's a few people that will say something that they don't like, and large news sources will pick just a couple of those tweets and then run it and say controversy. People apparently don't like so and so,
Right.
and then just embed those tweets.
Right.
Yep.
And it's like, no. You say people, we mean literally 3 people don't like it. Like, that's all you could find. And nobody even retweeted that. Like, why did you share this? You're just stirring people up. And I think that's been the issue with Star Wars, is because there's been so much. I remember with Rose, there was all that hate that she was getting, and people were running with that. And I was like, this feels like a very small amount of people who were saying these terrible things.
Right.
Why? I don't like that these large, I don't want to call them news sites, or just like, I don't know what to call them, but they report on different kind of fandoms and
the clickbait
and other
sites.
things. Yeah, entertainment sites, all of that stuff. Sure. They're the ones that they have a responsibility to report and be fair and provide actual news. And sometimes they tend to drift over into sensationalism, just like we know we need some traffic. Let's stir up some comments about this and kind of, get a little debate going in the comments, and they'll pluck some of these terrible opinions out to give them a voice to amplify that. And that's not right. Now, I think it's just fans going back and forth talking on their own platforms that are not, news providers or things like that. That's fine. That's just having a debate, as long as you're being fair and respectful to everybody. But it's that plucking a few bad opinions out and giving them a spotlight that drives me crazy. And that's not just Star Wars. That's America, baby.
Well, it absolutely is. And I wanted to come back to a point and kind of relating to that. And you said, the 0.00 whatever % earlier, and right around the time my power flashed the second time. That was something that we've talked about. Pete and I met each other over social media and being podcasters in our group of podcast friends. But when we went to Star Wars Celebration in California, and we all got to meet each other in real life and hang out at the bar at the Marriott and have drinks and talk and whatever. But we went to Celebration, we went to this convention. It was 4 days of literally nothing but Star Wars. And there were 40 or 50,000 people over, 4 or 5 days. It was all happy. There was nobody standing in the middle of the convention center holding up a sign going, I think The Last Jedi is the worst because of this and this and this. And why did they have to make a girl the lead in the new trilogy? Like, that's not real life. Right. But it's the classic, any of our parents or grandparents would have said it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. And that goes back exactly to your point of those 2 or 3 tweets that have something negative. And whether we're talking about fandom or whether we're talking about politics in our country in general, there's a pretty much mirror, microcosm one versus the other, that, there's that 1-to-1 comparison. And it makes me nuts. And I think that's why, I know certainly that's why Pete pushes back the way he does, because that's not what Star Wars fandom is. Star Wars isn't gatekeeping. You said that before we came on air. You're like, I'm excited to do this, but I'm not a fan like you guys are. And that's why I kind of am nervous sometimes. Like, we want to be a show. Most of the people that we associate with that do what we do are people we're a Star Wars show that loves Star Wars. Whatever level you love it on, like, let's hang out, let's talk, let's, and there needs to be more of that. But sometimes the ding dongs are the ones that ruin it for everybody else.
But I think that's part of the challenge, and it is, and the reason why I do get kind of pissed off about some of these outlets, because there is so much love. And I mean, the reason you discovered Matt has a Star Wars fandom is because he had some Star Wars, pops or action figures behind him, and that's great. It's the problem I talk about all the time. The guy I saw at the county fair was wearing a Star Wars shirt. And we started talking, and he started in with the regurgitating the rhetoric that's coming from the clickbait sites, the click hate sites, which are making their money on finding something negative and poisoning,
or literally just making it up. Either way.
And just sort of poisoning that piece of the fandom. Sorry, mate. I know you were going to say something, and I couldn't see. I couldn't stop myself. That's my problem. There you go.
I'm just going to insult them. They can find me and be mad at me. I'm just going to say that if you get to that point that you're so mad that all you spend all your time online talking about how much you hate something, that's not healthy. Something is wrong with you, because if I'm a fan of something and it repeatedly disappoints me, guess what? I'm no longer a fan. I just walk away and I find something else. That's happened to me with so many shows and other things. That's just life. Things change, you change. That's how that works. So if you really don't like it, then just walk away. There's
right.
there's
I'm
there's
an
more.
Auburn fan.
You've never
This
had
is
a better
Auburn
time to be
football.
alive to be a fan of something, because there's a million of like things or franchises out there now.
Yeah.
There's something out there you'll love. Just go find it. Move on.
That's right. That's right. I'm an Auburn fan. I'm an Auburn fan and have been for years. But guess what? I'm over Auburn football because basketball is good, and the Braves won the world. And the Braves won the World Series last year. So the
Yep.
Braves made up for the fact that Auburn football is its own hot dumpster fire. And you know what? I didn't burn a couch in my front yard mad because Auburn can't get its act together. I just went, okay, cool. We're moving on. And I say it all the time. My comparison is with Star Wars fans, especially. It's like if you went to a restaurant one time, had a terrible experience, hated it, but instead of just not going to that restaurant again, you go 4 times a week, you pay for the food and spend all of your energy and effort talking and telling everyone about how much you hated that restaurant. Like, if you don't like it, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Spot on. Let me, can I have a question for y'all?
Please.
There's just from my level here of Star Wars
Absolutely.
love and trying to like catch up and absorb as much as I can. Do y'all think that, especially now with Disney owning it and then putting out as much as they can content wise on this, do you think that this will get so big that it will be impossible to keep up with everything? And then you'll just be like, I'm a fan of the Skywalker saga. Like, do you think like 30 years from now, it'll be like that? Like I'm a Star Wars fan, but more specifically, I'm this portion of it. Like Marvel is there, I think now, because they've just done so much, and Disney's going to do the same thing. Do you think it'll be like that, or will it always be I can watch and read and do whatever it is in the future that we will absorb content through our skin? I don't know how that will work. How is that going to go?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because I do feel, one of the things that we talked a little bit about it before is like, if I didn't watch Clone Wars, can I still enjoy Mandalorian? If I didn't watch Rogue One, will the Andor series make sense to me? All this sort of thing. I think as long as they make it all accessible. So for example, Nick and I talk about this all the time, because he and I, he probably less than I can't get into the comic books. I've tried, and I know that there's a lot of
zero comics.
I know that there's a lot of really fun and interesting stories happening below the surface in the comic book stuff, but I can't keep up with it. I think as long as they continue to make it so that you don't have to have seen one thing to enjoy the other, which is a challenge, right? That because like the first big challenge for that, and it was an interesting, I think, a key learning for them, honestly, the Lucasfilm folks, is in Solo: A Star Wars Story, which if you didn't watch Clone Wars, and Maul shows up at the end of there's a guy named Adam. He lives across the street from me. We're good friends. Every time any genre movie comes out, whether it's Marvel or Star Wars or DC or Jurassic Park, we go on Thursday night together. We leave the kids behind so we can have our nerd night. And we went to go see Solo together. And Maul shows up at the end of Solo, spoiler alert. And he was immediately like, wait a second. Did this take place before the Phantom? I thought this was after that. So it confused him. Right. And I think that's the only time that the Star Wars franchise had said, screw it. If you haven't seen Clone Wars, you're on your own.
Right.
And I think they learned a lesson from that. So, and then I go to the other extreme where Ahsoka shows up in The Mandalorian. My dad, huge Mandalorian fan, loves all the movies, has never watched a frame of Clone Wars or Rebels or Resistance or anything, honestly, that hasn't been on the big screen or a live action. And I said, so what did you think of Ahsoka? And he said, she was cool. Yeah. And I was like, you have no idea how cool she is. Do you want me to tell you about it? So as long as they can do that, if I can watch Mando and not know who Ahsoka or Bo-Katan was beforehand, we're good. But I'll caveat that in saying the bigger your story gets, the harder that's going to be. And you're going to have to start to draw a line at some point. Like, I think Marvel's there now with some of the movies. Like, if you didn't see movie A, movie B may not make as much sense. Now, I've seen them all, so I don't know that for sure. But I'm behind on Miss Marvel on Disney Plus. I'd love to watch it, but I haven't gotten to it. I haven't seen Thor: Love and Thunder yet. I want to get to it, but I just haven't. If I don't get to them and the next thing comes out, am I going to feel left behind?
Right.
Yeah, and I think for me, and I've said this, and this has been a part of kind of my Star Wars content consuming journey. I was of an age where Clone Wars, like when it came out, I knew it was a thing, but I was like newly married, out of college, trying to live that grown up life, doing whatever it was that I was doing. And I was like, oh, yeah, I want to watch that. And the one or two times I watched it, I was like, it's okay. It didn't grab me right away. And I didn't pay attention. So it wasn't something that I was into from the beginning.
Right.
Fast forward several years later, Rebels is on. And even though Rebels almost in a way from animation style, whatever it is, maybe feels a little more juvenile. I hate to use that word because that's not really what I mean. But like compared to Clone Wars, whatever, I started watching Rebels and I was hooked right away. Like Rebels is literally one of my favorite Disney era Star Wars things they've done, period.
Yeah.
But what it did for me, and I think this is where I kind of come to your question, Matt, is with there being so much stuff available, I think they do a pretty good job of setting it up so that for me, Clone Wars became almost like a reference manual. If something happened in Rebels and I Googled it and found out, oh, that took place in an episode of Clone Wars, I could go back and look it up / watch it.
Right.
The Darksaber, the Mortis arc, one of these other things that happened. And then eventually I get, hooked into eventually watching all of Clone Wars or watching Clone Wars along the way. But I think it creates this way to go consume what you want. And if you want to know more, there's a bunch more here for you to go and get into. But for the most part, they've done a pretty good job of not making it mandatory. Like if you don't watch this, you're missing out.
Right.
Same thing talking about our parents. My mom watches Mandalorian because she thinks Baby Yoda is cute. Like she got into it and she's watched both seasons and she likes Mandalorian because Baby Yoda is cute. Her only other connections to Star Wars prior to that was that I'm her kid and my dad is a sci-fi guy too. So I think they've done a pretty good job of balancing it, but I also think that your point of the bigger it gets, can they maintain that is the kind of the question of the day.
That's difficult. Yeah. Yeah, no, I've never felt lost. I've never, not that I can remember, although I will say thank God for Wikipedia.
For sure.
I don't know. Y'all may think that's not very accurate, but it has helped me.
No.
Wikipedia actually,
they're friends. They've been on the show.
Yeah, they've actually come
awesome.
and hung out with us. They're actually very cool.
Well, they for people like me that like love it and just try to consume what I can as I go, that has been a lifesaver. And then you go down like rabbit holes, just like you would regular Wikipedia, and you're reading way too much. And now I'm even more confused sometimes. But it is great.
But and I think that's what's kind of fun about being a Star Wars fan now. Like, and Nick and I talk about this a lot, and this is why I was curious about your sort of entry into Star Wars. And I love that it, the spark was a video game, because I look at my son. I say this all the time. So people who listen, sorry, you've heard it 100 times, but it's very fun to me that, my Star Wars heroes were of course Han, Luke, and Leia. Right, I was the original trilogy kid. That was but my son is a Clone Wars kid. So his favorite Star Wars characters are Rex and Fives and Cody from the animated show. Those are his guys. Like when he wants action figures, he wants the Cody figure. He wants the Rex figure, which is so interesting to me. And yet, and this is the really fun part about where Star Wars is to me, he still had his I am your father moment, because he didn't really get into the films as much, which is so strange to me as a Star Wars fan, that the movies are secondary to him, which is awesome and weird.
Yeah.
But when we watched the Clone Wars series and I know you said you weren't a big Clone Wars fan, but in season 7, they actually lead up to where Order 66 happens. His favorite characters turned into bad guys.
Yeah.
And that was rough for him. Like
that
he
was
literally
his your father moment.
Yeah, literally his face drained. And as bad as I felt as a father, I was like, oh boy, I'm really exposing him to some horrible stuff. I was like, this is cool, because this was his I'm your father. My daughter, who loved the movies, but she came in through Rey, and we watched the original trilogy and the prequels. She didn't know that Palpatine and the Emperor were the same guy. So when that moment happened, she'd already known the I'm your father thing, because she's alive as a human being in 2022. But when that happened, she was like, whoa, that's really cool. So Star Wars still continues, and I think that's a testament to people like Dave Filoni and the storytellers, making sure you still get your moment, oh wow, that's pretty cool. And that's, I think that's what's so kind of important about Star Wars. And again, the fact that one day my son will probably get into the movies because that's the core of Star Wars. Again, saying that without trying to sound like a gatekeeper, but it's the reality. I mean, that's where it starts. And those movies will be so different for him than they were for you, Matt, than they were for me, than they were for Nick, because he's coming at it from a different angle of the story, which honestly, I think the fact that Star Wars is now 45, 46 years old, 45 years old this year, actually, the fact that there's still ways for people to get into it and enjoy what they like. And again, there's people who love this High Republic stuff like much more than I do. And not that I don't love it. I just haven't been able to get into it because, to your point, Matt, gosh, there's so much Star Wars. Like, what do I watch? Where do I put my effort? And that's a good thing, I think. And as I said before, and I think it's sort of, put it on a t-shirt, as long as they don't make it so that if I watch the new series, whatever it is, Acolyte, Andor, whatever, and they reference something that was only in a book, then they've started to lose me.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. Or only in a comic book, or only in Rebels, right? They need to. And the reality is, look, Star Wars it's a deep story. It goes different places. But I mean, you having not watched Clone Wars and Rebels, the Darksaber has a huge history. But it's also pretty explainable as whoever holds the dark sword rules Mandalore, or the Darksaber rules Mandalore. Okay, I get that. Done.
Yeah.
If you want like more of that, it's there.
Yeah.
But that's all I need to know. Bo-Katan wants it, and Din feels like he hasn't earned it. Okay, cool. Let's see that story.
It turns out that the fine folks at Lucasfilm seem to know what they're doing. I know that's a wild statement.
Yeah.
I know that's a big thing to put out there, but it seems like they know what they're doing, and it seems like there's a place here for everybody at every level. If you only want to watch the original 9 or the core 9 movie trilogy, the Skywalker saga, you're there. If you want to mix in Rogue One and Solo, you're there. If you want to go animation, let's go. Live action, let's go. Comics, book, like they really do pay attention to what's going on. And I think that, again, just circles back to, kind of talking about social media, talking about everybody's going to find something to complain about at some point. It's human nature. It's who we are. Maybe as Americans, I'll go ahead and throw that out there. But like, and certainly as fans of any fandom, whether it's Star Wars, Marvel, Stranger Things, DC, whatever your thing is, at some point you're going to be unhappy about it.
Matt,
Pete did a video we use all the time for a while, and it was a little spinning thing, and the tag said Twitter, because the internet just likes to be mad or something like that. That's where we end up. But we don't have to be, because guess what? If I don't like it, I'm not spending extra time here. I'm moving on.
Right.
Yeah. Matt, Andy Lemire, a good friend of the show, and just a good friend in general, said, I'm certain there has been a ton of comic-only content in the Marvel movies that I've missed, but I'm still entertained. Let me ask you this, because I want to see if I would imagine the three of us are similar fans in that I love the Marvel movies, but I probably haven't read more than like 6 comic books in my life in the Marvel world. Do you watch a movie that you love and then go like, I know there was much stuff in there, and then go research it online after the movie and say, what did I miss and why?
All the time. Yeah. The one thing that I will say Marvel did get me to go buy, because I got so into leading up to Endgame, I was like, I can't wait for these movies. I need to know at least how they did it in the comics. So, luckily those things have been out for so long, you can get the whole, the volume.
Yes.
And I was
like the
just
trade paperback.
I read that in one day. And so then it was like, ooh, I think I know, I have an idea of where it's going to go. And they stayed pretty true. I mean, there's some character changes, and some characters weren't even in the movies. But yeah, but definitely, that's probably one of the farthest. But definitely pulling it up and then reading, seeing what's coming out next, and getting more character backs. That happens all the time. Yeah. Unfortunately, sometimes during the movie, so then it's like, crap, I have not paid attention. I got to rewind, figure out where I'm at. That happens every time.
And now that you have Disney Plus, have you ever gone back and been like, I want to go find out what that arc is that was being mentioned, or have you gone back and watched certain stories because your research has gotten you there, or has the research just been enough for you?
Oh yeah, I've been I'm trying to remember why I jumped back into it, but I was all about let's go back and really dive into the prequels. Let's give them another shake here. And I enjoyed them more than I did years ago. For some reason, I think just the story kind of stood out to me. And I wish I could remember what sparked that, because that's called ADD, friends. It's just like some random thing, and I don't even remember what it was, led me down this path. And now I was like all into rewatching them one week. And then felt more of an appreciation for it. Like, you know what? There are some bad moves here. Some characters I wish never came around. And just weird dialogue for Anakin. That don't know what happened there. But yeah, it makes you appreciate the rest of the stories a little bit more. So yeah, that happens. That's all the time, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of a cool thing about where, it's this weird sort of evolution of this geeky world. So like, the very short version of the story is I got into writing for Star Wars Galaxy magazine because I was working with my dad's sci-fi and horror trivia game, and so leaving out a lot of details of that story, but I ended up going to a lot of different comic book shows. But this was back in the 90s, where it literally was comic book guy from The Simpsons, and that was about it. And now the genres like this, superhero movies and Star Wars and even Star Trek, now with all the different Paramount shows, it's coming back. And it's okay to be a big fan of Game of Thrones, and the Lord of the Rings series is coming, and that Dungeons and Dragons movie, which actually just saw the trailer, looks really cool. I can't wait for that. But it's okay to do that. This world has changed, and that it's interesting to watch that these movies are now like, it's not weird to want to be there on opening day for the Batman. It's, it's really, I mean, even in '89 when the Michael Keaton Batman came out, that was sort of the first pop culture phenomenon from a superhero movie. But it's interesting that now, like, it's cool to do, it's fun to do. So
it's cool. I love that it's like, you're not going to get weird looks when you just start like spewing off like, oh, I love this and this and this. Like, they're not going to be like, oh, that's a nerd. Like it's cool to be a nerd now. However, I hate that it's so difficult to get tickets for opening night now. Used to just be, I could just walk up and get them. Now you got to like, tickets to go on sale at this time on this day. And if you're not like in the first hour of snatching them up, you're not going to be seen at opening night Thursday at 1 a.m. So, that's the only downside. But I got 2 kids now, 2 little kids, so it doesn't matter. I've seen 4 movies in the theater in the last 3 years, so it doesn't matter to me. But it was frustrating back then. Now, whatever, y'all watch it. I'll wait till it's streaming.
That's right.
In a way,
it'll be available soon.
It's funny because I almost enjoy them. It's funny, the theater experience has totally changed. It's interesting too because it's actually become really social for me. Like, it used to be I would want to go see, it was the only way to see the movies. And now me and a handful of my nerdy friends, it's like kind of a, let's get away from the wife and the kids. We're going to go see, the Batman. We're going to go see whatever and just kind of like get out. And it's funny that going to see what would have been kids movies 20 years ago as adults is the way to get away from the kids.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's a bizarre world that's happened. So
I still get my fill, even though not being there opening night. My guilty pleasure is going to YouTube and looking for reactions people have shot in the movie theater where they're not supposed to of the screen to hear the crowd react to certain moments in the movie. That's my thing. That's like, you know what? I want to get some chills. Let me just go pull this up. And it's like, yeah, I wanted to yell too, but I watched it 3 weeks later by myself. Nobody else was in the theater. So
on a Tuesday afternoon.
That's it.
I watched it 45 days later on HBO Max.
That's it. I've run into so many people. They're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, not working. You won't tell anybody you saw me here at this time.
That's right.
Now let's turn around and watch the movie, please.
I'm on a sick day is what we call this.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
That's exactly how it goes. I've only seen movies in the afternoon.
Yep. Totally fair.
So we want to, Nick, did you want to, if you have a couple minutes, Matt, we'd like to be able to take a couple questions from people who are hanging out with us. Nick, if you want to throw the link up there, while we wait to get some, if anybody wants to jump on in, Nick will throw you the link in the chat. Join us. Matt has graciously said he would take a couple questions from you. I'm going to ask you one more question while we wait for folks to pop in. If we have anybody, what is your favorite theater experience? Like, what movie has kind of that biggest, I'm glad I saw it in the theater moment for you?
Oh gosh, of all the movies.
Any movie, yeah, Star Wars or otherwise, yeah.
Oh wow. I had to go, and it was during like this was during those last 3 years. I had to go see uh Endgame
Yeah.
in the
Yes.
movie theater. That one I could not wait to see streaming, and that was also pre-COVID, so it was like things
Mhm.
didn't go out streaming as quickly.
Right.
So it was like I got to go see it now, or I've got to wait like 4 or 5 months for it. So that was for me. That was pretty big.
Yeah,
Uh,
that
I got really into Hunger Games too because my wife loved it, and I remember that was like after seeing that I was like, we've got to come back and watch all of these in the movie theater. But I love the theater. I'm just a I was a it used to be before kids. It was like every weekend. I was like, I don't even really want to go see this movie, but I just want to go sit in the movie theater and eat popcorn and watch something. So I watched everything in the movie
Yeah.
theater. Let me tell you something. Back in the day, when I had freedom, you'd catch me every Friday or Saturday night. I'd be at the movie theater watching something.
Yeah, it's funny. We just saw the Elvis movie in the theater, which was one that I was like, I could wait to see that at home. But friends of ours wanted to go see it, so we put the kids with somebody else, and we said good luck, and went out to go see a movie. And it was kind of cool to see a movie that wasn't even. I hate to say it wasn't an event movie because, and by event movies I mean those big blockbusters that people expect that everybody's going to go see. But it's kind of cool just going to see a movie. There's that social aspect to it, and I think pandemic has kind of reminded us how important it is to go see a movie in the theater and to have that sort of that experience. I hate to sound like Nicole Kidman in the AMC movie theater opening, but there really is something kind of fun about that experience and hearing people. I talk a lot about how, because I was a 1977 in theaters, saw the original trilogy kid, and then like most people, I only saw the original trilogy on VHS or DVD afterwards. But going back into the theaters, and the moment I'll never forget was it was great because I took my dad to go see Star Wars in New York City at one of the big events because I was doing some stuff for Star Wars Galaxy magazine. And the line I'll never forget is when C-3PO says, when they're stuck in the trash compactor and he hears them screaming because they're happy because he stopped it in time, and he says, "Curse my metal body," and like people just laughed at that. And you forgot
Yeah.
that's actually funny because you've watched it on your couch 620 times and it just became a line. But to see it with other people and to remember that Star Wars is funny, and I think maybe that's it. And as a humorist, as somebody who's a comedian, the value of a laugh is often lost on a screen, right? So the fact that you have so many people follow you, and still, I mean, I was telling Nick, I'm just watching your stuff and preparing to talk to you. It was great to just have that laugh, but the laugh in the room versus the laugh, in my dining room with a cup of coffee at 7:30 in the morning it's a different experience.
Yeah, it's. I wish I have seen more like re-releases in theater. The only time I've ever gone to do that in a movie theater, not like we do that. There's a theater in downtown Birmingham, Alabama Theater, that does that regularly. But Back to the Future 2, when they did the re-release on October, what is the date they went to? 15th.
Yeah.
2014, whatever. The date they go to in the future, they re-released
Yeah.
it that day in the movie theater, so I went to watch it there. And it's just fun. You're just in the room with everybody, you're like, oh, we all love this, don't we? We
Yep.
already it's just the camaraderie. Like, even though you're not sitting around talking the whole movie, it's just fun to watch it with other people who are on that same level of love as you are with it. So and you're right, hearing the reaction to stuff is just like, it brings it to life again for you. It's like watching it. Almost, it's as close as you're going to get to watching it for the first time again, I feel like.
Yeah, I just saw today our friend John Howie from the Resistance broadcast posted that Jaws is coming into IMAX in September, and I feel like I gotta see that there because I've only seen that at home, and it's and actually, so Andy again mentioned, and Nick and I were fortunate to be together at Star Wars Celebration when Kenobi hit. They premiered the first 2 episodes. We were in a 5,000 or 6,000 seat auditorium seeing Kenobi with
the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, incredible nerds like ourselves. One experience I wish I could have, and I'm just thinking of this for the first time. And actually, Matt, I'd love to hear what your reaction was was seeing Baby Yoda / Grogu for the first time. Was one of the few moments where I was sitting on my couch and stood up and was like, oh what is but I can't imagine what that would have been in a theater
Yeah.
with folks. What was your
Yeah.
response to Grogu? Baby
I remember
Yoda?
that moment because I'm watching it on my phone in bed, and at that point
Yes,
it's probably
same.
3 a.m. now. So you're just like, I like froze, and I was like, okay, hold on. So you rush to the internet. You're like, like, oh my gosh, what do I type to find? He didn't have a name.
What did
You're
I
like,
just watch?
Yeah, little Baby Yoda. So I guess you probably named that because everyone was searching the same thing. I wanted,
Correct.
there's no name. We don't know. Baby Yoda. But yeah, so that was incredible. And then you're like, I gotta have I need a Baby Yoda Funko Pop. And they're like, oh, we didn't make any.
Right.
They'll be here in 6 months. You're like, come on, Disney.
It's like the 70s
Really, this
all
is very
over
unlike
again.
you. I'm surprised you didn't have boxes ready to roll out the next day.
But that's one of those amazing things where as much as people, and I'm with you, but you were saying before we got on about, or maybe it was, I don't know, the show's been running for so long, I'm having so much fun, I may have forgotten when we said it, but we were talking about how there is no limit to the license. However, and I am with you on that, because when I see Grogu hand sanitizers, I realize that nothing is off the table.
Right.
But the fact that they opted to not have that leak, they put so much effort into it that they gave up merchandising opportunities. It took a whole year and change to get our first Grogu toys, and which, by the way, I have every Funko Pop that's Grogu, and it's insane. And they really have given us every version, whether you want the blue cookie version or the butterfly version or the silver colored knob version or the I have it. If you want it, Matt, if you want, give me a call. I'll send them to you. I got to get them out of the
I
house.
like my favorite is Murderer Grogu, where he eats the frog lady's babies.
Yes,
it's like not so sweet anymore, is it? Yeah,
it was cute till he
never
starts
looked
eating
at
the
him the same
embryos.
after that. Nope.
But I mean, that was one of the rare times where merchandising was put on the side so that we could have that moment. I mean, there's you may or may not know him, but if you have a Star Wars podcast, you know him. Dominic Pace played he was a bounty hunter who was a background character. Really great guy. But talking to him, he literally didn't know. He was on set, and all they knew is that the Mandalorian had probably a child, but they didn't know anything about it, which is pretty wild considering the fact that just about everything in the world has been spoiled. But they went so far as to make sure that it wasn't spoiled so we could have that moment. But again, imagine that moment with 500 other sweaty Star Wars nerds. It would have been, we all would have lost our minds. We lost it individually.
Yeah.
But to see it, or Luke at the end of season 2, which was pretty wild.
And so great. Just like, man, you're so invested because you're like, you fall in love with this character. Like, this is the most adorable thing I've ever seen. And they want to take him and run experiments on him.
Yeah.
No, we must protect you. I am Mando. You must protect this child at all costs. Like, you're just totally invested in the story now.
Yep.
And they never lead you straight. You never go down any wild paths that you don't want to go down. It is always, this is the story, and we're staying in this lane. And Jon Favreau just crushed it. I mean, and it has brought. I know people that did not watch any Star Wars ever before this, but they watched Mandalorian. And that's what hooked him in because it was so good. So
yeah,
it's a great series.
Well, we talked about it before. It's actually honestly, it's a simple story, right?
Yeah.
It's warrior and cub. It's I didn't want this kid, but now I'm committed to protecting this kid. That's a simple story. And I think that's why Star Wars works. And I think, if we tie in all the things we talked about over the last hour and a half, it's how do you keep that story so that you can follow it, so that you don't need it? If you want to know the whole history of Mandalore and the Darksaber and the different clans, it's there for you. But if the only thing you really want is a fun, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, a fun little every week, show me this guy protecting this kid on some mission, that's awesome. It's there for you that way as well. And I think that's why Star Wars works. And I think that's also why we alluded to it before. There is also sort of this weird gatekeepery thing where people take such possession of the story, because a story that is simple with layers and layers below it, if you want it, you write that story in your head. And if it doesn't go that way, it pisses you off. And I've said it before. The Last Jedi, when I walked out of the theater, I said it was the best and worst Star Wars movie I ever saw, because in my head I had written The Last Jedi and I was wrong on everything. And actually, that's pretty amazing that Star Wars was able to deliver a story that where I got it completely wrong.
Yeah. It's almost like the gatekeepers are mad that it's so accessible.
Good
But
point.
that's a testament to how great the story is that it's so deeply embedded in our culture. Because even if you've never watched a second of any film or series, and you've never read a page of any of the books or comics, you could still grab some random person off the street that didn't know anything about it, and they could probably still name at least 5 Star Wars characters for you just by seeing their picture.
Yep.
And they could tell you who Luke's father is, and they could talk like Yoda, because it's just such a part of culture. Anybody that's making content now that you watch on your TV probably loves Star Wars. They grew up with it. So it's just so much like it's like worked its way into just about every facet of our culture. So it is. It's like they're upset that people can just walk in and pick it up. But that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Well, and gatekeeper,
like you have to prove yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and gatekeeping has been around for years as the internet amplifies it, right? I mean, I would, the comment I always make is, I was a Metallica fan way back when they first came out, and then they became the biggest thing in the world, and then people started to be like, well, hey, you weren't here when the first album came out, you didn't get the bootlegs. Well, but that doesn't mean you're not a fan. You can like the latest stuff. You can have only seen, I don't know, the Obi-Wan Kenobi series or The Mandalorian or Rebels or whatever. If you love that, that's great. I mean, I can have a conversation with you about that, and that's cool. And that's what being a fan's about. And I think people have forgotten that way back in the day, fandom was disagreeing and theorizing and having conversations, but not trying to change somebody's mind. You may have loved the Ewoks. I may have hated the Ewoks, but we could have talked about it and then, gone out and I don't know, played Monopoly or something afterwards, whatever we would have done as kids. But it wasn't about trying to beat you. It wasn't about, nope, you're wrong. Ewoks are bad. And here's why. It was, you loved them. I didn't. Cool. We liked that movie, right? All right, good. Let's move on. Yeah. So that's all I got to say about that. I'm like Forrest Gump.
That's right.
I'm Forrest Gump.
We can all agree the porgs are terrible.
I used to have I do have a pork pop.
They're not that bad. It's the screaming. It's the little siren noise.
That's right. It's the scream.
Yeah, the sound is painful.
It is adorable looking creature. It looks like definitely something that we would eat in the South. That we would definitely fry that up. I bet I bet a pork. I mean, what Chewbacca was when he was about to eat one.
Right? He had one on a spit. He sure did.
So
I'll bet you
they are edible. We know that.
Southern fried pork has to be. I mean, come on. I mean,
that's right.
Kentucky fried pork.
Country fried pork with some country gravy on it.
Get some of that gravy on it.
I would devour that.
I'll try it. I'll try anything one time. Matt, this has been so much fun. We have covered so much territory and ground tonight. I cannot thank you enough for hanging out with us tonight, indulging us in these conversations. Before we get out of here, please tell everybody where they can find you, what you've got going on. Kind of give us the plugs about where Matt is.
Yeah, you can follow me just about anywhere. Just search for AL Ostrich. That's my handle. Also, what I do on It's a Southern Thing, just search for It's a Southern Thing. You can Google that. It'll pop right up. If you live in Central Alabama, I do trivia nights at Tallulah Brewing Company in Jasper on Thursday nights. And then once a month, I'm up in Coleman at Goat Island Brewing. And I do a Star Wars trivia about every 6 months or so in Jasper. I just did one a few weeks ago. So the next one will be coming up later.
I sense a road trip in my future.
I'm thinking if I'm going to come visit Nick in Alabama, it's going to be during the trivia night. And we're going to, and by the way, I wrote over 200 questions for the Amazing Science Fiction Horror Trivia game. I suck at Star Wars trivia. I absolutely do. And, but yeah, that would be a blast, man. That is really cool.
That's right.
It's fun. Star Wars is one of my favorite. It brings a great crowd, and I buy the prizes for every trivia night. I try to buy it themed on what we're doing, and I have no problem buying Star Wars stuff. And I'm bad about buying stuff and then I'm actually gonna keep this. I'm gonna give y'all something else. So I do enjoy it. That's one of
Love
my
that.
favorites.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It really has been a pleasure. It's been so fun to connect with a fellow Alabamian, somebody who I've admired for your humor, your videos, that stuff for a while now. And I love connecting with you as a Star Wars fan. So thank you for giving us this time tonight and the chance to hang out.
Oh, no problem. Thank y'all for having me on and not running me off, not being gatekeepers.
No, we don't do
Yeah.
that here.
No.
We have
You're the good people.
we have drinks, and in fact, I'm going to go ahead and do this at the end of the show because I maybe missed out on the most important part of what streaming Star Wars is on Friday nights. We normally have a toast around the time we bring our guests on, and we forgot tonight. So I'm going to raise my glass to you, Matt. I'm going to raise my glass to Pete, to all of our friends hanging out and watching with us tonight. Cheers. Happy Star Wars. Happy Friday.
Happy Star Wars.
There you go.
Pete,
Yes,
we
sir.
talked about Podathon at the top of the show.
We did.
September 17th, raising money for Make-A-Wish Foundation. We were trying to hit $10,000 this year. We've got a bunch of content creators, Star Wars shows. We're going to go all day. We're going to do a bunch of live shows. We may pre-record a couple.
Yeah.
If we have some guests that may not be able to be available on the day, but are fun guests, we want to record and do shows with them. Besides Podathon, you can find that at the Podathon on your social medias, or you can go to thepodathon.com. If you donate now to Make-A-Wish directly, you'll get double the amount of raffle prize entries between now and Saturday, September 17th. But
That's
besides Podathon, what's coming up this week for ATG Cast?
We spoke to Mark Von Olen, who is the brand director for Denoa.
Good luck with that.
I can't say their name. Denuo Novo. Yeah,
Right.
which is
Used to be a Novos.
Well, it's sort of, and in fact, if you listen to the show this Thursday, you're going to get the whole inside story as to what happened with the Novos and what they're doing. They were just at San Diego Comic-Con this week. By the way, if you're listening to the show, they're still running a 10% off and free shipping for their helmets. Now, as you see, I have way too many helmets behind me, but they're all the Black Series helmets. They cost about $120. The De Novo stuff is in the $600 range, and
a little bit more.
When I was at Star Wars Celebration, though, I picked one up, and I will tell you, I considered dropping the money, but I made the excuse that I didn't have room in my bag. But these things are incredible, and they have a lot of cool. They just announced at San Diego Comic-Con this past week, the Luke in Bespin fatigues. Now, if I was about I don't know, I'm going to put about 40 pounds lighter, I might have considered it, but I can still get a helmet. I can put it back there. But so that's this Thursday. And Mark Von Olen has, he's also got a podcast as you do when you're a Star Wars fan. And
That's right.
He's a huge Rebels fan. So if you're a Rebels fan, you got to check out the episode this week because we go into some really cool stuff. And you'll also learn the Novos helmet situation. So, but
awesome.
But Nick,
Yes,
Matt,
sir.
thank you so much. This has been a blast. Matt, maybe we'll drag you into Podathon somehow. We'll get you involved.
I will come back with porg recipes.
That's right. There we go.
What is it?
Porg recipes.
Yeah.
In fact, by the way, before we go, I shared today your Waffle House analogy. Would you mind sharing that with people
so
today? Because
good.
I think that's so important. Because it applies to life. It applies to fandom. It applies to
Star Wars fandom.
It
It
applies,
applies
to
everywhere.
Thanksgiving dinner with your politically charged family members. What's your Waffle House analogy?
Waffle House analogy is when in doubt, you're not sure what to do in a situation, try your best to be like Waffle House, which is that they will welcome anyone at all times of the day. Regardless of how nasty it gets out there in the world, they are not shutting down. They're going to stand up and face the storm when no one else will. Everyone else will run for it. Not Waffle House. And the big thing is, if it does not happen inside the Waffle House, it doesn't happen to Waffle House, it doesn't concern Waffle House, they don't care. It's none of their business. And that's the way to live life, I think. Just mind your own business. Be nice to everybody. There you go.
I tell my
for us all.
When I drop my kids to school every day, I remind them just be kind. That's all I ask. So
that's right.
That's it. Everything else will fall into place. Just do
Exactly.
that.
This school year, when they get out of the car, I'm like, hey, be like Waffle House.
They're gonna be like, I don't understand what that means, Dad. You're gonna be like,
we just went to the Waffle House at the beach in Gulf Shores on Sunday night this past weekend. So they're fully prepared at this point. So
you're 5
they saw
days
some
afterwards.
things.
You're safe. That means you're good.
It's a great Waffle
Ready.
House, too. Yeah. Good one.
Well, Matt, thank you so much. And Nick, thank you for hanging out again on a Friday night with me, buddy. I
Always.
appreciate it. And hey, may the force be with you.
Always.